Hello. Make sure everything's working. Hello. Hello. Is everybody here? Is the mic okay? Let me know in the chat. First like, let's go, Stig. Let's go. We haven't streamed for about a week because we've been so busy with videos and just like the start of the Premier League is always hectic for me because I've just got so much other work that I need to get done. Or ninth like. All good. Let's try and get those likes up straight away. What's up? Big up Lawrence. Not sure if he's still here, but big up to Lawrence. Check him out if you don't know who he is. Does also sort of live streams after games, before games, match previews, reviews with other fans and sort of stuff involved. I've been over on his channel a few times. I think... Oh, Daniel's saying I think it was leggy against Crystal Palace. I think we need a new centre-back because I don't want to put pressure on Josh. I see it. Like I've sort of said before, I've sort of made my points clear about the centre-back. I can understand why Maresca wants one, and I do actually agree with the idea that we don't really have enough depth for what we need in that position, in terms of the passing quality and sort of that tendency to break the lines from the back, which we'll speak about a little bit in today's stream. But at the same time, I really like Josh, and if this could be his season to sort of break through at a higher level to the point where next season your pairing could be Levi and Josh, that could be huge. So like, there's opportunity with everything that sort of comes along with it. It sort of forces an opportunity. I've just realised this. I think this is a StreamYard update. I think it's made the chats bigger. I quite like that. I think it looks a bit better. What do you guys think about that? I think it looks quite cool. Maybe it's just me. I've just noticed that. All good. Con, what's up, Caleb? Yeah, let me know who's in the chat. Let's say hello to a few people, and then we'll start sort of answering questions, and we'll speak about Palace, because if you haven't seen, there is a video uploaded. I uploaded it yesterday after the Leeds game, the Palace review, which is doing okay at the minute. Not brilliant, but it's performing okay. I do really want those sort of match previews and match reviews to become a staple of this channel. And of course, we did them all last year, but I really want to take them up a level this year with the sort of new sort of features that we've got in terms of the tactics board and what we can do. And I'm also putting in ridiculous amount of research. I feel like a lot of people with their like match preview and reviews, they go sort of straight into it, which is very, very good. Like, people that can sort of do that and get a quick one out, I think it performs better on YouTube for that reason. But I would love it if we can get the support needed to make my time worthwhile, because whilst other people sort of get straight to it throughout the week, like already I'm watching West Ham games in preparation for the West Ham preview. And then, of course, once we play West Ham, the weekend I'll be like rewatching the game, sort of figuring things out, getting graphics done, ready for the match review. So a lot of time and effort goes into those. So yeah, all the likes, comments, sort of to boost the algorithm, like retention, everything, it all helps. It all really does help. Daniel likes a new update. Hello, Abayomi, and tuning in from Melbourne, Caleb. Let's go. What time is it there for you? If it's 12 here. I've been to Australia once. That was in Brisbane when I went, but I can't remember if it was like 12 hours ahead, so it must be quite late for you. 12 hours behind even, I think. Right, let's quickly refresh. Drop a like if you haven't already. Daniel said, I heard Tosin might be for the West Ham game, might be available. Yeah, it seems that he might be back, which is good. He'll be back in training at the end of this week, supposedly. 12 likes. Can we run that up? Because we've got 23 people in the building. Can we quickly run that up to 20 plus? And then we can try and get that spiraling up towards 50 to 100 by the end of the stream. Esteval has to start against West Ham. I'm not sure. Like I say, I'm watching the games now to sort of figure out what I think the best game plan would be for that game. By the way, the preview, and this is what I mean in terms of like offering insight. The preview in terms of how Cucurella was going to sort of drop in slowly to form a sort of asymmetric box at times in here, but also to pin Sarr in here with him. Bang on. It was literally bang on. So that shows you the level of sort of what I'm trying to bring in terms of what I'm hoping allows you to go into the game with a little bit more context, not only as to what we're going to do, but why we're going to do it. And of course, opening up that angle. If you haven't seen the video already that I posted, I spoke about Chalobah's sort of a lot of the attention was on Josh, and I understand why, because we was unable to sort of find those balls between the lines, especially when Cucurella or Palmer or any of these players in the pockets were in relative space as a spare man, only with the 2 pivot of Crystal Palace. But at the same time, Chalobah was just as important, and also like just as I can't think what the word is, to blame, but it's not like to blame because that makes it sound like a really bad thing. But he was as much at fault in terms of not being able to find our progression through the lines, because we couldn't find our progression through these sort of passing gates in here for a Chempong as often as we would have liked. But what we were able to do is Josh was sort of able to bait the press from Mateta and almost sort of engage him a little bit higher up, where these two then sit off a little bit. And it's something we did quite a bit last season, where you bait that pressure and then these players sort of sit a little bit off the 2 centre-backs, because then if you drop it to them, they've then got a larger distance for these players to cover if they're pressing, sort of like here. So we was able to do that quite a few times, but then whenever it sort of went, Josh baited the press, went into a Chempong, Josh went into Chalobah in these areas, we wasn't able to sort of access this space as quickly or as efficiently as I would have liked, which stunted Gittins in those 1v1 moments. He wasn't able to get into them as often as possible, and when he did, he was sort of receiving in awkward areas, sort of on the back foot, either facing his own goal, which is something that he needs a little bit of work on, in my opinion. That's one of the raw traits that come with him. So yeah, we struggled to progress not only through but also on the outside of the block, and there was space on the outside of the block to be accessed. So that was an issue, in my opinion, and I think that was an angling issue. I think that can be sorted quite easily with just a few changes. Imagine, for example, this was Cucurella, this was Josh, this was Chalobah. Your angle bias is much better, and Reece was able to, let's say, do this. However, of course, the opposite side of that, pardon me, is that I don't think Maresca still trusts Reece to have the sort of role in here where he has to be constantly working hard to get back into position, trying to sort of crash the box, counter-pressing at pace in the middle. This is something that Cucurella can sort of do constantly because he's got the engine and he's able to do it. His body allows him to. James, I think you're still trying to be a bit protective of him, and if he sort of was doing this role, then, you know, it might not be as effective. If this was Gusto, then I think we actually would have seen it like this. But because it was James, I think he had to sort of be in that right centre-back role, which was unfortunate because, yeah, it sort of affected the progression on that left-hand side, like I said, in terms of being able to access this space. Let's sort of have a look in the chat. Esteval did more than Gittins when he came on. Yeah, different type, but like Esteval, like he's so exciting, but I just think people need to like calm down. I catch myself doing it as well because he is just so exciting, and I would be all for him starting against West Ham because, like you said, Gittins, he did struggle in this game. I think that was partly due to this sort of tactical level that sort of stunted his sort of ability to be fed the ball in good areas. But he is raw, and I said this when people wanted to sign him, and I've said Gittins was one of my priority signings this summer. I absolutely love him, but I did say that I don't see him hitting the ground running, so people need to be sort of aware of that, because it's not something that comes as a surprise to me. Let's quickly check the likes. We'll keep going through the chat. On 16 likes, can we get that to 25? Because we've got 25 in the building. Can we run that up as quickly as possible, please? Really, really, really helps me out if all of you do is like the video and then you are done for the stream. Easy peasy. Rudiger did constantly. Are you talking about that progression on that left-hand side? Yeah. Feel like we're really missing Lavia at the base. Yes, we're going to speak about Lavia in this video. We're going to speak about Lavia in this video a lot because I want to sort of mention how he could sort of solve the issues. And again, if you haven't watched the video that I posted yesterday, go and watch it because we're going to speak about how Casado was so important in this game in terms of the tweaks that we made and how we was able to somewhat figure out a way to sort of split the lines in the second half a little bit better. And something that I think we may have to use if we don't find a different solution at central centre-back, whilst Acheampong sort of develops that tendency to split the lines a little bit more. I think Lavia or Santos can play as centre-backs. I'm assuming you mean dropping in, not actually playing as the centre-back. Santos used to play as a centre-back. I don't think so. I think he plays a defensive mid, dropping in as a half-back at times, maybe in Brazil, but I've not heard him play as centre-back. Maybe I just not heard that. Das says he's fed up with the team. Every time they give me hope, I take it away. Shameful match against Palace. I do think it was just like it's rusty, like pre-season rust. We still kept a draw. We still had enough in us to win. So I would say, like, I get that it's frustrating, but I do think we should just chill on it a little bit. And I'm not as worried about it as other people. Can we talk about Neto? Man, Belly offers anything? I don't think he was that bad at the weekend. I think he got some good crosses in. I think he was doing his job fine. I think the progression to him was sort of stunted because I think they knew that they could lock off our left-hand side a little bit easier. They were sort of making it a little bit harder for Neto to receive in here. A few times he sort of dropped in with his back to play, sort of took the ball into these areas before sort of coming inside. So I'm not too worried about Neto. I think, again, it sort of depends on the game. I think Jamie Gittins is Madueke 2.0. Don't really like the lad as a player, but as a person, absolutely love him. Hope he hits the ground. Like I said about Madueke, I think Madueke was extremely important for what he offers, and I'm glad that we brought Gittins in because I think if you don't have that sort of quality somewhere on the pitch that they offer, then I think that your balance is just completely skewed. So, yeah, that was the same reason why I wanted Madueke to stay. Is the same reason why I think Gittins is a huge, huge signing this season. Glad to have you back streaming, bro. Been missing it. What's up, Zach? The topic, basically, we're just sort of talking about the Palace game. As you've said, seems like we've got a few fans overreacting a little bit. Agreed. But yeah, I think we were just sort of talking about the progression issues that we've sort of faced at the back. Yeah, and we're going to sort of go into a few sort of tweaks that you can make. One of the tweaks being what you can see on screen. But we did also say, sorry, I was reading the chat. We did also say, of course, that a lot of the reason for that is the fact that Reece James in this area probably isn't trusted by Maresca, but this would have been somewhat of an easier sort of way to not stunt your progression, at least to one side of the pitch. Yeah, I agree. I say I agree. Like, defensively, like, it was fine. It's just, I think in games like that, I think in certain games, I think it'd be okay. If against low blocks, I think it's not great because I think you need to be able to access those wide areas because against low blocks, like, they're going to clog the middle of the pitch. So I think you need to be able to access those wide areas quickly. And I think the fact that we couldn't sort of stunted us and meant that we had to try and force our way through the middle of this block and the space just wasn't there. So I think it was sort of like things sort of stacking up on top of each other. Against maybe a team that's a little bit more open pressing, I think that Chalobah would actually be okay in here. Big up Charlie. I'm assuming you don't think I'm Charlie as in Blues Brother, do you? Because I'm Connor. As is the okay. Big up Connor. There we go. Hope you're well. Good. I'm good, Thomas. How are you? Let me quickly catch up with these. Before the match, I was thinking we were going to win the quadruple. Now I'm thinking we might just get relegated. Yeah. Two opposite ends of the spectrum, eh? Tactically, why did João Pedro have a bad game? I said this at the time. I don't think he was absolutely terrible. I just think he was. It's different, isn't it? Because he was ineffective, right? And I think the reason he was ineffective is, and I spoke about this in the video. Let me put this back to how it was, because otherwise it's going to get confusing when we're trying to talk about the game. I think the problem here was that you sort of had Sarr tucking in, sort of trying to make it hard to access. Hard to access Caicedo. And then what you also had is you had the centre-back sort of jumping out. So you had Gurhey and Richards being aggressive in these areas when the ball jumped to that side to jump onto either Cucurella or Palmer. And that Cucurella or Fernandez. meaning that the pivot was sort of able to not only have one on Palmer minimum, but also have a little bit of protection of this space, or jump onto Caicedo if he was to receive the ball in behind, which didn't happen as often as you would have liked. So the sort of pressing details of that almost allowed Pedro to minimum have the man-to-man sort of here, but also a lot of the time, because let's say one centre-back would jump, because they had the 5 back, they were able to shuffle, and they almost had a 2v1 on Pedro at all times. Now, the way to sort of what's the word? The way to, I can't think what the word is, combat. The way to combat this would have been, and it was, because we saw it at the lap, and we saw it once or twice with Pedro, it just didn't happen as often as you would have liked. Once again, a lot of things in this game didn't happen as much as you would have liked. Yeah, I thought you did. I thought you meant Charlie. All good, bro. We'll speak about this in a sec, the centre-back. With Pedro, like I said, if somebody was pressing out here, what he had to do was sort of arc his run into this space. And we didn't do that as often as possible. Attack that space with direct balls over the top from, say, Chalobah. Now, again, this was somewhat to do with angles at times on the left-hand side. What we did see once or twice is this happen on the right-hand side, where the player jumped up to Fernandez. Let's just do that. He curved into this space. That is a terrible arrow. And then James was the one finding that ball into there. That happened on a few occasions, but just not too often enough. And I think the game needed Delap's skill set quicker than we got. I think that's one sort of gripe that I had with Maresca's decisions in this game. I think he tried to adjust in the second half. I think, like, in terms of how we progressed the ball, I think the main tweak for me that wasn't made quick enough was the Delap sub. That was the one sort of aspect of the game that I wasn't overly happy with. But the rest, yeah. You know what? Jokes aside, I think there are no excuses we should have, because we were just, the other day, just no excuse, apart from Caicedo, coffee, a little bit of Neto. We're just, yeah. Like I said, I think technically I agree, like, in terms of, like, the touches, and, like, we looked a bit lackadaisical with touches and technical quality, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that we were, like, absolutely horrific. In terms of, especially in terms of setup, I don't think there was too much wrong from what we've got. Like I say, like, I think a lot of the issues is, like, sort of where we're at and what we have at our disposal right now, especially in the back end of the pitch, because the progression issues sort of came from that. And like I say, second half we did adjust with Caicedo sort of dropping in and forming almost that back 4 to overload this 3, force them back a little bit, and allow Caicedo, who's a better sort of line breaker, to be the one sort of trying to pick out Cucurella, who was the spare man in those gaps. And that was sort of what happened quite often. 2-2-6, Chalobah toss in defence, midfield, Cucurella, Caicedo. Yeah, I mean, this is against teams that sit back. This is something that Maresca did last season and has done at Leicester. So I do think that we'll see, I mean, I see it sort of more as sort of a 2-2-5-1, but it's the same thing. So yeah, like, that is something I think we will see eventually. It just depends on the personnel as well available and the team that we're against. Palmer in the centre. You're carrying on your thing. Maximum aggressive structure. People complain about Gittins when he was never given the ball fast enough to make something happen. Yeah, exactly. This is true. Need Simmons bad. The game versus Palace was tailor-made for him. Yeah, he would have been. It was. The one thing that I would say is I still don't think that it would have been night and day, because I still think that the issues to get the ball to him would have sort of stunted it a little bit, because Cucurella was often the spare man and we weren't able to get the ball into him. But he is so natural between the lines, and I think Fernandez was so poor that if you did have, like, Simmons in there instead of Fernandez at times in those pockets higher up, maybe he was able to sort of produce something a little bit better. But he is definitely tailor-made for those games, definitely. Pardon me. Would you want to see Cuckoo going left centre back in this scenario? Like I say, yes, I think it helps progression. But I think with James, as you say, with the overlapping or going into midfield, I think in games where he goes just into the pivot, we will see that. I think because it was a back 5, maybe he didn't want to push James too high and have the workload for him to track back too much for his body, is one thing that sort of comes to mind. Last season, see, right, here's something that I tried to explain last season. I think there's a difference. Well, I say I think there is a difference between slow progression and like purposeful slow progression and just slow progression in terms of like you're slowing down your own build up. Slow progression in this game was we got the ball into good areas to progress the ball, someone like Chalobah out wide, and the angles were off. We weren't, and it stunted our progression. So once that space was open, by time we'd sort of adjusted, got the ball to a better angle where we could get the ball through, that space had then been shut off. That slow progression was based on sort of technical qualities, angles, like poor touches from Fernandes a few times where he found himself in a bit of space, took a poor touch, and all of a sudden he's got someone on his back. Those sort of slow progression issues, they come from the technical quality and like the poor sort of build up mechanics of that game. Last season, where some people would say this is slow progression, in a bet, like in some instances, it depends on the game as always. It makes sense because let's say you're building in this sort of 3-2-5, 3-2-4-1, right? The idea is that you build the ball up slowly so that you can move up as a team. As this sort of moves up into here, you move up and then your counter pressing nets are set. So you don't want to go too quick because otherwise you end up with a huge gap here, which can be exploited through direct balls with long ball, with sort of winning second balls, and also carriers. There's lots of different ways you can exploit that gap between the two lines of engagement. So what you want to do is to move the ball up slower so that these lines of engagement are closer together rather than further apart, because otherwise you end up with lots of space for the team to attack on the transition. So a lot of times last season, people would say, why are we progressing so slowly? Like, we need to speed it up. And I disagreed because I think it was what the plan needed. At the weekend, I think they have disparity. They're different things, essentially, if that makes any sense. The weekend wasn't the plan. It was just poor execution of the plan. Somebody's saying, why didn't we see Gusto overlapping like in the Club World Cup final? I just don't think the game was made for that. I think the setup was fine. I think the idea that Kukurea had to drop in to pin Sarr, I think it was a good idea. I just think that we lacked the ability to go into the pivot, to progress into the pockets. And then even in the second half, like I say, we sort of did drop in, have this 4 here against the 3. And then what you had is these players, let's say the pivot was sort of here. The idea was to bypass this area and go straight into that sort of front line so that you could end up with, if we just get rid of that, basically a 6v5 there. So you're looking to bypass the midfield in this little block. Obviously, the hard part of that is if you don't bypass it and you don't win the second ball and it comes straight back at you, then you have essentially got a 5v4, but then you're banking on someone like Kukurea to make up the ground and trap back, and of course your wingers to work hard as well, Fernandes, Palmer, etc. So that looked like what the idea was later on in the game, and it worked better with having the likes of Delap, Andre Santos, and those players in there to cover that ground. We nearly got the chances from it. I mean, it nearly paid off. If we'd have scored that goal that Andre Santos missed, where it went forward into Delap, ball comes back, cut in, goes across, and Santos scores, we'd be talking about this as a brilliant tactical tweak. Like this the whole video that I made yesterday would have been Maresca's genius tactical tweak that won us the game, because it worked. It generated a high XG chance, and the idea worked. But we didn't come away with the 3 points because of poor execution. So that has to be taken into account. What's up, Bruce? How you doing? Let's refresh the stream, see what we're on. We've got 45 in the building. We've got 23 likes. Can we get that minimum to 40? Because we've got 45 in here. We need to get that to minimum 40 because we need to be pushing that to 50. And if we can get that to 40 likes, and we end up with more views and everything just spirals. So please, if you're going to do one thing to help me out, drop a like on this video stream. 5-0 against West Ham. Palmer scores a hat-trick. I hope you're right. Honestly, think we still compete for the title. However, I think we wouldn't see free-flowing football For match fitness, yeah, you got to be aware of the match fitness. Really do. Do you think we should have done better if we would have done better? Sorry, if Hato played left centre back instead of Chalobah. Progression wise, yes, but again, the issue with that is if you start Hato instead of Chalobah here, then you've got a back two of a Chempong and Chalobah, a Chempong and Hato up against Mateta. First game of the season, new signing, 19 and 20-year-old, not ideal. You're not going to do it, are you? You're just not. But yes, Hato, as brave as it could have been something to bring on in the second half to aid you in build-up. So the manager couldn't Chalobah to open up and pass wide like it happened constantly. Couldn't tell Chalobah to open up, do you mean? But he was on his wrong foot. So if he was opening up, he would he was biased to his right foot. So that angle was even if he wanted to do that and get out wide, it was taking an extra second because of these sort of angle bias. People are also acting like it was an awful performance when we could have easily had 2 or 3 goals with better finishing. Chalobah, Santos, Esteval, Pedro all had big chances. Definitely, I don't know about 2 or 3 goals, but definitely we could have won that game 1-0 at the end. 100%. Maybe I get what you mean. Of course, the Santos one's a big chance, but yeah, Chalobah had a good chance in the first half. Esteval, which one was the Esteval chance? I can't remember an Esteval chance. But yeah, definitely there could have been more. What do you think about 4-2-4? Like with most things, it just depends what game you mean. What sort of game, what sort of personnel. Sanchez was absolutely shocking on Eze's free kick. Yeah, the ball was sort of it was blocked, but it was poor. He has to do better. He does. But of course, his view was sort of skewed, wasn't it? So it's tough to judge, but you do think it should have done much better. I think there's a scenario where a CDM drops between the centre back. Let's talk about that now, because that's what we were sort of going to speak about in this stream. So, what we did see, as I sort of said in my video, is Caicedo dropping deep, and then James would sort of push up to sort of here. And what you actually ended up with is sort of a skewed-ish 3 with Caicedo here. This obviously, like I said, gives you a player who's a little bit more comfortable sort of fizzing it through the lines. Cucurella would sort of drop into here still to receive the ball. You had Fernandez or Andre at the time who could do that. And then you had James, who was sort of open in space as well to almost drag a man over, one of the pivot players sometimes, or sort of open up space for Caicedo, because this guy would sort of, again, he didn't know whether to follow James, if it was Eze, stay between the two in a dual pressing role and open up that space for Caicedo to play through the lines. When it comes to an option in the future, let's say that we're playing in a back 4 again. Let's just put this sort of team into how it could be. Enzo, Caicedo, sort of like that. If we were playing with this sort of lineup again, whether it's sort of as to right centre-back, to left centre-back, or in the middle, I do think the usage of a half-back is an option to fix what's been going on with the central centre-back role, because as we've sort of said, at the minute it's Joshua Chempong or Tosin. If Tosin's in there, brilliant. If Josh is in there, does he need extra support so that he can be pushed over, so that he can use his carrying a little bit more as well, because that's one of his best traits. He had the most carries in the Premier League this weekend, as a little fun fact. So do you drop Caicedo between, split these 2 over, and then send both fullbacks? Maybe you send one into midfield and you send one into the pocket, for example, because then you've still got someone like Fernandez who's a little bit more sort of able to open up those spaces for himself. Now, how this would work even better is likely if you had Caicedo here, Lavia here, because Lavia, he's your guy when it comes to that progression and that ability to use his press resistance, stand on the ball and sort of be almost still on the ball, which opens up those passing lanes, and then find the likes of Caicedo and James or whoever between the lines. And then you can have one of your sort of fullbacks in the pocket, because again, if it's someone like Cucurella, you know that they're going to track back at pace. So these recovery distances are fine. And you've still got Lavia and Caicedo. So if anything, your rest defense in this case is actually really, really strong. Of course, the other hand of that is you only really have 4 attacking players on the pitch. So you are banking on the fact that your progression is going to be so good that you get these 4 in the game as often as possible. And again, maybe this is the sort of game where you would bring Esteval in because you want those sort of really strong attacking players when you do get that ball into them to make something happen. So yes, this is definitely something that I think is what you can do to form. Let me just sort of get rid of all this. To sort of negate that progression issue that you've got. I do definitely think this is something you can do. Now, whether Maresca wants to compromise taking an attacker out of the lineup is the different story. And again, it depends on the game. I think if we was to play a huge game tomorrow, let's say Arsenal, I think maybe he'd actually use something like this because it's a little bit more passive. You've got more players ready to sort of get back. You've got strong sort of presence in the middle. You've got like a solid foundation. And I do think that this gives you better sort of optimal angles. You've got carriers on the outside still. Yes, you still have an issue in terms of your angle bias on this side of the pitch. But, and again, maybe it's sort of like this instead. Maybe to sort of get rid of that angle bias, you have someone like Lavia who can move around a little bit like Vitinha, and you actually have it where Chempong's in the middle, Chalobah's here, Lavia's here, and he sort of drops into that area to progress the ball. And he comes a little bit more central and it becomes a little bit more asymmetric. And Caicedo can drop into here. There's lots of different ways that you can shift that around. But you'd essentially have that as your sort of base set to build up from the back. So it's definitely something I could see working 100%. Would this be more viable with Lavia? Absolutely. You can also see Josh stepping into midfield from centre back. Yeah, I mean, he does that with his carries, doesn't he? I think I'm done with Enzo being in the half spaces. Would much rather Santos there because of his mobility. In a lot of games, yes. I think his poor game isn't going to help because I do think that he's so clever in those half spaces on when to receive, and then when he is the spare man receiving the ball, if he gets even a moment of space and he gets his chance to look up and sort of see the picture, there's fewer players you'd want in there in terms of that passing ability. And of course, arriving in the box, he has like brilliant ability. I think, oh yeah, Football VAR saying it here. Finished the season with 26 GA. So I'm definitely not done with it. I just think that certain games where you need a bit more mobility, I think you need to see maybe some quicker changes to bringing Santos in. I did mention it on Twitter at the weekend. 1, Enzo had a really poor first half. But 2, because we were struggling to progress the ball, we had to sort of dive into winning those second balls, and we weren't doing that enough. And if you're going to do that, then you want to get your physical players on the pitch. You want Delap, you want Santos, you want either Gusto or Hato as well. So it's something that is definitely sort of part of the thinking. Let me just move this when it comes to that for sure. Well, in certain game states, definitely agree. Could this also be a Caicedo right back setup? I mean, yeah, because then he can move into midfield, right? So what you could have is, let's say James isn't playing, Caicedo's playing right back, and you've got Fernandez playing instead. So let's say that off the ball, that's your setup, right? You've got Caicedo right back, Cucurella in here, you got your 2 midfield, and you got Palmer. On the ball, I guess then it could become Lavia drops in, Caicedo goes over to here, these 2 split, Cucurella pushes up, or Cucurella inverts, and Fernandez goes up into the pocket. Because then what you have is essentially you've still got these 3. That's still going to be your rest defense once you do move forward, these 3. With these 2 sort of narrowing off, Chalobah and Chempong. You still have your 3-2 base. You still have Lavia in the middle with Caicedo sort of in that tucking in. All it does mean is, like, again, profile-wise, you have Caicedo and Cucurella in the middle. Perfect. But you do technically have both your fullbacks in inverted areas. So would teams look to exploit long balls into the channels, drag these centre-backs over, which then means that because this centre-back's over, these players are technically covering in at centre-backs. So could you end up with a situation where you've got your centre-back out wide and you've got like Cucurella or Caicedo in centre-back positions covering the ball? Perhaps maybe that's one issue with it. but it would depend. But it definitely makes sense profile-wise to do that. Santos Enzo instead of James with 3 centre mids. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it would be. I think Enzo is one of those who starts slow. Lampard was like that too. You mean in like a Premier League season? I just think he just looked rusty. He just looked off it. Like, I don't think there was too much to it. I just think he just had a poor game. Like, I think his touch was off. He looked like 1 or 2 seconds off the pace, essentially. We've got 35 likes. Can we run that up? Anyone that hasn't liked the stream, please do drop a like. We're going to go into sort of 10 minutes of questions now. So any questions I'm willing to answer, drop them in the chat. But let's run that like total up because, yeah, we need to run that up to help the stream and the channel as much as possible. I'm just quickly checking if we've had any news. I doubt we have. How's everybody feeling about the sort of Xavi Simons move and how that's materializing or lack thereof? We had like an update yesterday from Fab, which went to 85%, which is interesting because I think it was lower than that before. I think it was like 80. Quick ideal setup for West Ham. I would, Waleed, but we do have a video on Thursday, and I have got a few more video sort of matches to watch to make sure I'm happy with it. So I'm not going to do that today, but keep your eye out on the channel. Thursday that'll be out. Do you watch a lot of Chelsea youth? Yes, I do. But yesterday I had to work on the Leeds Everton game, so I missed it. I watched the first half. Yes, I've seen Maheka's hat trick. Brilliant. I think he's top. Kevin McQueen. I like Emanalo as well. There's lots of players in that group that I like. We've got some top players coming through in that group. So it's good. The 21s are going to be really fun to watch this year. Reggie, of course, as well. Reggie Walsh. Still think it happens. Petty Goal said the deal is expected to be completed after Leipzig's game against Bayern. Yeah, I saw that. I did see. Yeah, it does. It seems like you say, Zach, with the deal done with a phone call, it does seem that way in the sense of like everything seems to be in place. It's just one of those things where the dominoes have to fall. And Kunku leaving, I think it could be one of those things where the second that sort of materializes into something, like we see both things happen on the same day. It could literally be that quick. What has Enzo done to make this team defensively solid? We don't concede loads of chances at all. I said this last season. It is purely like the fact that we move the ball slightly slower and we keep the lines more compact is a huge part of it. The pressing is slightly improved. I still think there's a few issues here and there at times, but I think specifically, it's just the distances that we keep with Maresca's setup. I think it is just more optimal. And it allows us to be a little bit more defensively solid, like you say. And I think as well, just like we are growing as a team naturally as well, in terms of like the leaders we had. Colwell had a brilliant end to the season. Chalobah, Sanchez, like he improved. Like there's points, things are happening to help that. But I do think the overall collective and the shape and the distances is a huge part of that. More concerned with outgoings. We're at a point now where we need to do 2 deals a day in order to balance the squad. Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it? Don't you think Enzo is so much better in the left pocket? Why do we see him in the right? Because Cucurella is the one pushing up, and you want Palmer to be in that middle sort of the two. So if you have it like this, then it allows for a more... Again, let's take Lavia out. Neto. Who do we have? Who am I missing? Chempong. Reese. Where's Reese? James. So in this scenario, you're asking about Fernandes. The reason he's over here is so that Cucurella can push into here, because then if you had Fernandes in this pocket, then, pardon me, of course, Cucurella can't push into that pocket as well. So then everything would have to shift over, and it would have to be Reese further up. So the reason for Fernandes on that right side is because you can switch his side, still have Palmer in the middle, and then push the fullback up to cover the other pocket. Has that literally just come up again, Zach, through Fab or someone? Oh, literally first thing I saw was open my phone. Nizar. But it kind of limits Enzo. Yes and no. Like, yeah, in that left pocket, him being a right footer to be able to play those through balls on his strong foot to the opposite side of the pitch is key. And then also just funnel play out on his sort of easily just have it sort of funnel over is fine. To give Bino Gittins like a good sort of supply. But I don't think it's so bad. Like, I think if Enzo had a better game, then people wouldn't be as sort of Annoyed is the word, maybe, but I don't think they'd mind as much of which pocket he was in. I think Josh had a bit more aerial presence to manage Mateta. Yeah, he was good. He was good in there, Josh. Like, he was good in there. I liked him in there for sure. I think he did a good job against. Sorry, I'm just moving everything back around. I think he did a good job against Mateta. Everything sort of in perspective. If we sign a centre back, it should be a left footer just because of the angles. That is one thing I'm slightly worried about. Not worried because I do think we have enough answers, but Badiashile, if he continues to sort of struggle with injury, Cole out, left-footed wise, Hato is more of a left. Like your two left footers are Hato and Kukurea on that side of the pitch. Neither of whom are Hato technically is a natural centre back, but again, it depends who you're playing with him. So yeah, I do think that maybe adding a left footer just for angle purposes, if you're going to do it, bring in somebody who can play as a central centre back who is left footed. Maybe then again, it's such a tough one because as I sort of said it in my video about the role. You've also then got to think ahead to who can partner Colwell in the future, because otherwise you don't want to bring somebody in who's going to block someone's path. So there's so many moving parts to the centre back position that a lot of people speak about a loan and maybe, but who can you bring in that's going to be an effective loan? Like Gurhey would have been perfect because it's not a loan, but he's just somebody he can coexist. He can do the Colwell role now. Yes, he's right-footed, but he's so good on both feet. He doesn't have angle bias. Gurhey would have been really good. Joined late, but why do you think Maresca didn't use tactics introduced in the Club World Cup? I just don't think they weren't man-to-man pressing, so there's no point going with split strikers against the back three when they're not going man for man. I just don't think it was a game where you'd really see it. I think, again, he did make necessary changes. Laporte on loan, I can't say I've watched much Laporte in the last few years. I'd be slightly worried about him defensively, though. In how we press. I think there'd be a lot of times where he has to sort of follow a man out and he'd be a little bit slow to react and he'd just get spun. I do think that would be sort of my biggest worry if it was someone like Laporte. But yeah, I just don't think the game was sort of set up to play in that way differently. Josh was great, limited Mateta to one half decent chance, yeah. And Sanchez screamed at him for that, by the way, if you're talking about that one. Don't get me wrong, I understand, you want to limit that shot. But I don't think Josh did too bad of a job. He was starting on the back foot. He got out to Mateta quickly enough, put him off balance, forced him into taking a shot on the turn. If Mateta turns, spins that in, generates enough power and gets it into a top corner to beat Sanchez. It's one of those where you just sort of, I think you just give that a clap. It's just that level. I think Josh did what he could in that scenario. And Sanchez sort of lost his mind at him. But Josh was the one who forced that sort of easy shot, which Sanchez just mopped it up cleanly. It was easy. Was that also the chance that Josh mistake led to? Which chance? The Josh mistake was then led. Do you mean? I know what you mean when he tried to play. Yeah, I agree. By the way, on Bade, he tried to play it over here because Casado was here and Reece was over here, wasn't he? And because he got the pass wrong, Casado was slightly ahead of the ball. It allowed them to attack here. I don't remember which chance came from that, but I think that's what you mean, isn't it, Ruben? I would assume. Yeah, Bade though, it's just cheap and it just makes sense, but again, it's a right footer. Maybe that's not what they want. They keep bringing up Hincapié. Would people be happy with that? I'm not overly sure that he fixes anything at central centre-back. I think that if anything, he gives you, he would sort of be starting as that left centre-back and still have your right centre-back in the middle, but it would give you a little bit more passing sort of angle quality in here. And he is somebody that could, he would start, he could be a starter beyond this season. So I think that that's one thing that would excite me about that. I'd have to watch him more in those sort of central roles to sort of discover myself whether I think he can do that role, because I'm not 100% sure at this moment in time. It's a different one. Cool. To combat the build-up issues, maybe we lean to Cuckoo, left centre back, Enzo left 8 dynamics. Yeah, we mentioned that. We did mention that because it gives you better access to here. I do think that the access to this sort of area of the pitch was really sort of undernoted in a lot of analysis that I've seen for the game. I don't think many people noticed, but mentioned the fact that you could that we struggled to access that area, which forced us inside more often, and that allowed Palace to really sort of really solidly sit in that unit in the middle, because I just think our lack of access out wide was really, really evident. We're at 50 minutes, 40 people in the stream. How many likes are we on? I think we're on 35. Can we get that to minimum 40? Can we get that to 40? We've got 40 people in here, 4 more likes. Please, if you haven't liked the stream, all I need you to do is drop a like really, really quickly. That's all we need. You think you'd start both the Lap and JP on Friday? So would you start João Pedro on the left? João Pedro on the left, Neto on the right, Palmer in the 10, the Lap up front, I'm assuming is what you'd do. Again, like West Ham, another back 5. So it's another situation where, like, are we going to build in a 4? I do think West Ham's press is much worse. So maybe it's a game for the Lap. Maybe it is a game for both, like you say. I need to watch a few more games and sort of come to my own conclusion. Don't think we need runners per se, because West Ham are just going to sit in a block. Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I think that you maybe want like Neto in there, because I think as well, like, you're going to need to break back. So like, even if your runners are technically like someone like Neto who give you good intangibles elsewhere, maybe that's the case. Would you start Badiashile in that game instead of Chalobah if he was available? If he's available, yeah, but he's not. So it's just like, it's not worth. But yeah, I would. What do you think about Maresca potentially changing his entire game plan and build up for this season in response to a Colwill injury? I don't think it will happen. I don't think he'll change it all completely. I think the one bit that we did mention is sort of the use of a halfback dropping into the first line. And I think we've already seen some evidence. Even last season, he did it on occasion. So I think we've already got a bit of evidence that he would do it. But I don't think he's not going to change his entire game plan for the build-up, I don't think. I would say. Why do you think Maresca not utilised Hato left centre-back in pre-season as a potential option? I mean, we barely had a pre-season for a start. But secondly, again, I said this, like, if this was Hato, then you'd have a Chempong and Hato as your back 2. Like, I just don't, that's not going to happen at this point in the season. Maybe you put Chalobah in here as the central centre-back and have Hato there. But again, I'm not too sure. I think there's just a lot of questions about that at the minute. I think Hato is one of those ones that we sort of need to wait and see how quickly Maresca deems him ready. If that makes sense. 39 likes. We need one more. Surely somebody can drop one more like to make sure that we hit that 40 mark. I mean, really, we need to be hitting 50, but we've not got 50 in the stream right now, so it'd be tough. We've got 45. If everybody drops a like right now, hopefully we can get a few people in before. We've probably got about 10 more minutes. Drop a few more questions. Let me just double check, see if anything's happened. Because that Vega thing came out, but I don't think anything's coming from that. Maresca sees him as a left back. Who's this? Hato. Yeah, I mean, I think most people do nowadays. I think the idea is that he's a left back who can play as a left centre back. There's that hybrid fullback role. Really hope Achimpong raises up to the occasion. I think that this could be a huge season for him. I really do. Is it weird to say you want Gittins to start again? Given enough game time, he'll be worth it. Oh, he absolutely, like, he's perfect for the squad. There's no doubt about that. It's just, he's raw and it's going to take time. But no chance. Like, it's 100% that he's perfect for this squad. He is. 2 19-year-olds in defence. No, exactly. Exactly. $46 likes. We ramped those up, didn't we? 4 more likes, guys. 4 more likes. Get that to 50 minimum by the end of the stream. I'll go for another 10 minutes if we can get to 50. If we can get to 50. Anybody that hasn't liked the stream, what are you doing? All it takes, it's all it does, and it gives me so much. Oh, Bruce, let's go. Like it on 5 different accounts. That's the commitment that I love to see. That is a commitment I love to see. Bruce is a real one. Legend, Bruce. And if you haven't seen the other video, by the way, from yesterday, I do recommend you go and watch that, because we actually spoke through the examples. How are you guys liking the new tactics board? Firstly, the tactics board, but also like the media section where we can bring up screenshots and we can draw on the screenshots. Are you enjoying that? Because a lot of people were sort of asking for you to be able to see my cursor when I'm sort of speaking about things from the games. So yeah, we're trying to use all these new tools for the previews and reviews now. So how are people liking those changes that we've made? It's all so good. Such a huge upgrade. Yeah. Cheers, Zach. Yeah, like it's huge. Like I've been lucky enough to be using the JLA tactics board for a little while now, with some of the work I do. But bringing it to my YouTube and being able to use it here, Abdullah saying really good, much better. Really glad to hear that people are liking it, because yeah, it's brilliant. It's really good software, and yeah, it just makes the actual like displaying everything so much easier, so much more fun to do, fun to use. Yeah, if you haven't checked out already, JLA Tactics board, it's pretty much in the link of every single video that I've uploaded. So go check in the links if you really want to have a look on it yourselves and have a little play around. But yeah, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. 47 likes, 3 more needed, 3 more. I feel like a what's it, like a market person sort of on the edge of this, on the market, saying 3 for £1. 3 more likes, please. 3 more likes. Sorry I'm late to the stream, but want to know if you see Sar and Josh as a central centre back or right centre back long term. I see them both long term as right centre backs. Yeah, there's not really a world where they start together, because, like, I mean, well, you could say that there's a world for anything to start together because of, like, I mean, you see it here with Chalobah and Chempong, but with like players fit, like it would be Levi plus one of those long term is what you'd think. Predictions on the type of news we get today, if any. Nkunku leaving, maybe, like, or like progressing on that would be my prediction. Whether we hear that Bayern are going to put in a bid and they're not just going to sort of only go for the loan, maybe it's something along those lines. If any, I think it'd be something like that. Yeah. Yes. Right, we're going to go for a few more minutes because I need to go make a few TikToks, because I'm trying to knuckle down on TikTok. If any of you guys use TikTok, please go and follow me over there, because TikTok for me is a nightmare. I cannot get the hang of it. I don't know what works. I'm still trying to figure it out day by day, and I'm struggling slightly. So if you do have TikTok, just go put in Connor Holden football over there, Connor Holden. Find my account and support me over there as well, because it's a slog right now. I'm trying to make sure. A lot of people just tell me that I just have to stay consistent and just forget about the views, and sort of just stick with it for like a month or two, and the algorithm will hopefully reward me. And I lose confidence. Not confidence isn't the word. I lose sort of like the fire, because you spend ages sort of planning ideas, making videos, sort of curating all the screenshots and bits you want to say. And then the video gets like 300, 400 views and it sort of caps. And it's disheartening. It's like annoying to an extent. But I'm pleading broke is hilarious. Literally, like they showed their hand with Voltemada, and we know that that's the sort of position they want to be in. So it's like, we know you can pay. Almost meta first 11 without knowing the opposition. Pardon me. Would this be without Xavi Simons? Because if it was, then it would literally be. It would be. Well, I guess just for angle purposes, it would probably be this, right? Right now. Any that's from Rice Crimping, more minimum width dynamics to use more rotations and combos on Sunday. We tend to lean on overload in the box for crosses. Yeah, against, I mean, it's quite hard against back five teams that are so compact in the middle of the pitch to have those sort of like close proximity like rotations, because like again the space is wide, so like maybe double width sort of moments would have been better to see, like having sort of those underlapping runs a little bit more, which we didn't produce enough of at the weekend. So yeah, there is different dynamics that needed to be seen for sure. But yeah, that's where I'm at. We're at 51 likes. We're over the hour mark. I think we're going to end the stream there because I do have to get a few bits done. Loan option at centre back. No idea for a loan option, honestly. But it makes sense if you can get one. Like, it's not a loan option, but I'll leave you with this. If you can get Taylor Harwood-Bellis for 20 million, purely as that central set, like 20 odd million, and you're not going to get him at that price because I just think he's better than that. If you can get him and then flip him on in a year or two's time anyway for more money, and it essentially ends up being that loan, it's probably not the worst idea. It's probably not. So I'll leave you with that. I'm not saying it's a huge, like, I'm not saying, oh, we're going to sign Taylor Harwood-Bellis. Everything's fixed in terms of our centre back position, and we're going to win the league. Not going to happen with that. It's not that level. But is it the worst thing we can do in terms of what we need? Probably not. And that's what I'll sort of leave it with for today. Thanks everybody for the support on the stream. Video will be out tomorrow. We've got a tactics video out tomorrow. Thursday, we've got the Chelsea v West Ham preview. And then Friday, I might do a stream in the day leading up to the West Ham game as well. So 3 new things coming this week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Keep your eyes out for all of that. Thanks, as always, for all the continued support. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.